I believe it's safe to say that most of us like to consider ourselves as open-minded, critical thinkers who question governments, the various powers, and corporations, because we know they lie. Therefore, we could not possibly be that gullible, deceived individual. Oh no, that's always the other guy, right? And as nice as that is to claim, how many actually put that into practice? Think about it. Because if that were really the case, well, I think you get my point. One thing I have learned, governments always have an agenda. And if they are pushing something and the masses believe, it's a pretty good indicator that we should put on the brakes and examine it, whatever it may be. No topic should be off limits, because we know greed runs the world and deceptions are real. So if the facts we are given hold any water, then they should stand up to scrutiny. And by examining the facts, well, that is how we will find the truth. So friends, let's start looking at the facts.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
The 60s. What a decade, right? It was a time of war, a time of civil unrest, but also revolution. And we cannot forget, it was also the decade of man's greatest achievement, landing on the moon. People sat and watched on their televisions in absolute amazement. As a kid, like most of you, I loved outer space. So the notion that someone would think the moon landings never happened always made me chuckle. Just crazy talk, you know. However, through my scouring to find an actual photograph of Earth, which was a lot more than I recorded on part 1 for time's sake, the only ones found without the disclaimer of being a visualized, stitched-together composite were the ones taken from the moon of the Earth. Now, I must say, once I really started to look and think about it logically, well, we all know the moon is just a fraction of the size of Earth, and it can look quite large to us. And the distance between the two would have obviously remained the same. So then I found it very odd that the Earth would look so small, or even as close to the same size as does our moon from Earth. You would think it would have to look enormous, but it does not. Hence, down the rabbit hole I went. Because what if, just what if, the moon landings never did happen? So let's take a logical approach and ask the obvious questions, even beyond the why haven't we been back? Now, NASA was established in October of 1958, and this replaced NACA, which was an aeronautical program. They did not specialize in rocketry. And in just a little over 10 years, they had created the technology to successfully land men on the moon in July of 1969. And that's a fact. And in just over 10 years working on the project, ponder on that for a moment. 6 manned missions in total, and even managed to bring along, a dune buggy. So forget about us not going back to the moon. Can you tell me any time in history when something new is discovered, invented, where other countries are not soon to follow? How about any technology that existed in 1969 that has not improved immensely by leaps and bounds since then? Our cars, our televisions, phones, all means of communication, engineering, not to mention computers. So the fact that no other country's space programs have been able to accomplish this raises some serious questions, at least for me. Not only that, but it seems our own country's space program has in fact regressed.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore.
More like one giant leap backwards for mankind, wouldn't you say?
We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But going to Mars should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imagination.
A painful process to rebuild? What? Now, was there anything we could do in 1969 that we cannot do today? Let that sink in for a minute. One thing I do experience is the loss of my phone signal going through that tunnel.
Yeah, I think something rather important is coming up here.
Neil and Buzz, the President of the United States is in his office now and would like to say a few words to you. Over. That would be an honor. Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure that they too join with Americans in recognizing what an immense feat this is. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And as you talk to us from the sea of tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to Earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done, and one in our prayers that you will return safely to Earth.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here representing not only the United States, but men of peaceable nations, and with interest and a curiosity and with a vision for the future. Honor for us to be able to participate here today.
And thank you very much, and I look forward, all of us look forward to seeing you on the Hornet on Thursday.
All right, now here's a headline you just don't see every day. Nuclear blast tonight may be dazzling. Good view likely. Almost 50 years ago, from a small island in the Pacific, the U.S. government conducted a test. It was one of a series to find out what would happen if you explode a hydrogen bomb above the Earth's atmosphere in outer space. It was the height of the Cold War. And in early July 1962, this Thor rocket carried a bomb 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb that hit Hiroshima up into the sky, 250 miles up. Other rockets then followed to monitor what was about to happen. And then there was an enormous white flash. Here's a view from another camera. The sky flashes red and green as particles from the bomb drop back into our atmosphere. Green is what happens when radiation collides with oxygen atoms high up in the ozone layer, and blue is when particles strike nitrogen atoms in the thicker air. So here's another view, this one from the ground. This is not a sunset. This is maybe the greatest man-made light show that we never want to see again.
Before we can send astronauts into space on Orion, we have to test all of its systems. And there's only one way to know if we got it right: fly it in space. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Three, two, one, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector good. Okay, the descent engine did not leave a crater of any size. It has about 1 foot clearance on the ground. We're essentially on a very level place here.
Wernher von Braun was a former Nazi rocket scientist, and he created the Saturn V rocket. Now, he stated in his book, Conquest to the Moon, that was published in '53, that it would be impossible to send a man to the moon because of the sheer size that the craft would need to be, basically 266 times larger than the Saturn V. I don't know about you, but all these things raise a lot of doubt for me. And we all know NASA is above all a military establishment. I myself must conclude that indeed we did not go to the moon.